Puritan Parliament, probably puritanical anyway. Puritans, including those who fled to America, sought to remove the elements they viewed as pagan because they were not biblical in origin from Christianity. During this period, the English Parliament banned the celebration of Christmas entirely, replacing it with a day of fasting and considering it a popish festival with no biblical justification and a time of wasteful and immoral behavior. Actually, they sent the army into certain homes to raid them and confiscate any cooked meat. That's how bad it was. This led to such resentment that it provoked the riots in Kent and led to the Second Civil War and the siege of Colchester.
I wouldn't have known how to pronounce that word.
Probably got it wrong anyway.
Yeah, well, the Puritans, led by is it Oliver Cromwell, took over, defeated the, I think, Catholic-leaning King Charles, I think, II. They beheaded him, and for a while, England ran without a king. But according to this, the controversy over Christianity is what led to the downfall of that and something like the reinstatement of a monarchy.
Oh, great. One of the Atheist Society of Knoxville members, Brian, wrote in and said, Christmas trees and lights on our houses came from the Celtic Festival of Lights. Also, Anglo-Saxons associated the powers of the mistletoe with the legend of Freya, the goddess of love. Beauty, and fertility. According to the legend, a man had to kiss any young girl who, without realizing it, accidentally found herself under a sprig of mistletoe hanging from the ceiling. Guys would pluck a berry when they smooched the girl, and when the last berry was gone, there would be no more kissing.
There would be no more kissing. I'm guessing that there were some guys who ran out to get a resupply on the mistletoe.
I hope they didn't try to eat the berries, though. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah, I've heard that they're not good. And I guess mistletoe is a kind of a funny plant. It's actually a parasite.
It's a parasite that lives off the tree that you find it in.
Yeah, what a ironic thing to make into a holiday symbol.
And romantic symbol, too.
All right. Well, another ASK member, Matthew, sent us a little story. He actually wrote it around regarding the springtime equinox, which is, closely positioned to Easter. He says it's funny how old stories of the sun travels in the sky are still celebrated today. It's even stranger that the story of the sun during the winter solstice was adopted and celebrated and adapted as Easter. For example, on the evening of December 21st, 22nd, in the northern hemisphere, the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky near the vicinity of the constellation Crux. And then, a few days later, the sun begins to appear and move upward a few degrees. And keep in mind that the people thought the sun went around the earth. In stories, the sun was anthropomorphic, and this story was told that the sun, as in the son of earth, was crucified and died on that cross. Mm-hmm. And then a few days later, the sun was resurrected from the dead, was reborn. Telling stories like this was a way for people to remember how to keep track of time. And, we have to use the sun and its position in the sky as our timepiece. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, of course, we have modern technology which splits the seconds, splits time down into the seconds for us.
Mm-hmm. And all kinds of information to remind us of certain events. But this just throws a light on the fact that the sun referenced that died in the middle of winter, stayed down for 3 days and then came back up and rose again, could have been more of a timepiece or a story to remember how to count the seasons and count the celebrations, or at least plan the celebrations. So it might have been a very different kind of sun that was resurrected at that time.
Yes, indeed. And I thought the point of that letter of arguing that, it was kind of dead for 3 days. Well, as the sun dips down to the lowest point, it's constantly changing the time or the length.
Where it hits the horizon during the year.
But on the solstice, the rate of change is very, very, very low.
Right. And might as well be in the same spot for 3 days, and then before it starts moving back up again.
Exactly. So thus it's kind of dead for a few days before then you can finally measure a little bit of change. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a nice little observation.
Really good. Now, what about this war on Mithras?
Well, the war on Mithras, yep. Well, people have forgotten the true meaning of Christmas. long before toys and consumerism, long before tinsel and lights, long before Santa and his reindeer, there was the Roman and Persian god of Mithras. He too was born on December 25th, the winter solstice, and was associated with the worship of the sun. So when people have been talking about the war on Christmas, what they really should have been talking about is the war on Mithras. So don't let the conservative Christians take out the true meaning of Christmas. Don't forget Mithras.
That's right.
As I read about Mithras, I was checking on an assertion I've heard amongst other atheist forums that Mithras was born of a virgin, but it actually turns out that it's a little more stranger story.
We have a call?
All right, I guess we've got a call.
We have a caller in. Okay.
Thank you for calling. Better hang up. Well, try again, caller. Give us a call back, and we'll try and catch the line a little more correctly.
215-2288.
All right.
And where were we?
Well, I was telling you that Mithras was actually emerged out of a rock. Mithras, not only did he not have a father, he didn't even have a mother. So does that beat out even a virgin birth?
I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up.
All right. I don't think either one was real myself.
No, both of them are just myths.
All right.
No one really knows what day Jesus Christ was born on. From biblical description, most historians believe that the birth probably occurred in September, probably 6 months after Passover. The one thing that they agree on is that it was very unlikely that Jesus was born in December. Since the Bible records shepherds tending their sheep in the fields that night, it's quite unlikely to have happened during a cold Judean winter. So why do we celebrate Christ's birthday on Christmas, December 25th?
It's because the Christians wanted to take over and put their stamp on an otherwise very popular this jealousy that the Judeo-Christian,
right.
The Judeo-Christo-Islamic God has.
Right. It calls to mind a line out of the Conan the Barbarian. You remember that with Arnold Schwarzenegger? He was sitting with a friend around a fire out in the middle of an open area, and he said, "What God do you worship?" And he would tell him, and he'd tell him about his God. And Conan would say, "Well, I worship Crom, because he is the ruler of the underworld," that type of thing. And it was just a nice way to bond with your friend and compare gods and who has the best power, like a superhero.
I guess it's a little similar to this day when people will say, "Well, what sign were you born under?" Yeah. It's an icebreaker. What's your God do? What's your sign do?
But like you say, there was little or no jealousy because everybody had a God, and sometimes they were the same, sometimes they weren't.
And I've read some of the ancient Greek works, and I've read obviously translations about ancient Egypt, and I can't recall a single instance where someone was going to war over not liking someone else's God. Now, when they went to war, they would appeal to their gods to intervene on their behalf, but from their point of view, their gods weren't so much the cause of wars. Now, having said that, there were times that their wars reflected jealousies and rivalries amongst their gods. I'm thinking of the Greeks here, especially. The great story of the Iliad about the siege of Troy is reflecting a conflict between some of their gods, but they didn't try to stomp out and extinguish other gods. And in fact, the city of Troy, I believe, had a temple to Athena, just as Athens had a temple to Athena.
But they personified their gods with more human traits than we do. They could be jealous, they could work at cross purposes, they could be like a feuding family or a soap opera. When you had a whole bunch of gods and they had equal or different powers, then you could have imagined battles between the gods. And if something doesn't work right, you could say, "Well, my God was trumped by that God," or whatever.
I failed to properly sacrifice to my God.
And Christianity and Islam and several will say they're only one God. But then they have Jesus, which is like a god. He's also a god. Satan, the angels have special powers and superpowers.
And if they're
over the supernatural,
I have to say, if they're suspending the laws of nature, how is that different from Aphrodite and Athena and Hephaestus. In a way, it's just rebranding.
It is. 215-2288. We have a few minutes left if you'd like to call in.
Yeah, we could get one call here. That would be great. All right.
The things that really make Christmas are the secular bits. We've been talking about that. The tree, caroling, the food, exchange of presents have nothing to do with religion. The Old Testament, Jeremiah 10:3, if you want to look it up, for the customs of the people are vain, and one cutteth the tree out of a forest, and work the hands of a workman with the axe, deck it with silver and gold, and fasten it with nails. They were the Bible, the Old Testament, Jeremiah specifically commands that you shouldn't bring in a tree into your home.
It was like they were focusing on a Christmas tree and saying it's a pagan thing and you should not do that.
Should not do it.
As a kid watching television, the holiday specials, I very much enjoyed the Charlie Brown special, but I always thought that, there's this speech. All right, we got a caller here.
We have a call, a couple minutes left.
Go ahead, pick them up. All right.
Welcome to Freethought Forum.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
Do either one of you guys believe that some humans possess supernatural powers?
I don't.
Or possess the ability to suspend the natural law in any way?
Nope. I would say that that's not the case. We're made out of ordinary matter, and we have only the properties of ordinary matter.
We don't even have the power of telepathy, which you would need to be able to talk to God or Jesus or whoever.
Yeah. Is there a reason you asked your question, caller?
I was not asking this from a religious standpoint. I was asking this as from, do you think the atoms and the molecular structure and makeup of our atmosphere and the things we live around are more manipulable by certain people to do things that might seem more supernatural?
No, I think that the word supernatural means above nature. And I would think, and most atheists do believe, that the world is a natural place, has no supernatural elements to it.
Yeah, and I don't think any one person is going to have a different ability to do that than another. Well, caller, we've got about 30 seconds left. We want to thank you, and we have, I guess, a few closing things ourselves to say. And
happy holidays.
We wish you a happy holiday, yes, whichever holiday you may participate in.
Bye-bye.
So this has been Freethought Forum, and you can send us an email at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. And I'm Faithless Forrest.
I'm Larry Rhodes, and we'd like to thank Sam Geltz and Jonas and Lee for all the